that too loud? No. One of the instructions, Kitty kind of sets you up for success here. And one of the instructions is don't be afraid of the bell. So I try to do it with a little bit, but not good. Well, welcome to the September 21st meeting of the Rotary Club of Des Moines. Good to look out and see these fantastic people out here. We have a great meeting today with a fantastic keynote speaker. And what, as Susan said, what a glorious day in Iowa today. So, and let's have a great meeting. I'm Kevin Kassir, President-elect, filling in for our President Becky, who's out of town on a business trip. So once again, you're stuck with me today. We'll start off with Susan coming up and doing the moment of inspiration, four-way test, and the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll do the meet and greet. And just a special thank you for Susan for stepping up and encouragement for others to do the same. We really appreciate it. So Susan.
Good morning. We're very fortunate today, as Kevin said, that our speaker today is Rob Sands, auditor for the state of Iowa. Someone I recognize as a purveyor of factual information and rational public service. These are qualities that have become more important and more rare in recent times. In more than 4 decades in the nonprofit sector, stewardship has always been a guiding principle for me. So let's see what some notables have to say about stewardship and leadership. Madeleine Albright, one of my favorites, said, "Just because you can't act everywhere doesn't mean you don't act anywhere." And the redoubtable Winston Churchill said, "The nation will find it very hard to look up to the leaders who are keeping their ears to the ground." True enough. This from President Dwight D. Eisenhower. The supreme quality for leadership is unquestionably integrity. Without it, no real success is possible, no matter whether it is on a section gang, a football field, in an army, or in an office. Very true. The Reverend Billy Graham said, "The time has come for all evangelists to practice full financial disclosure. The world is watching how we walk and how we talk. We must have the highest standards of morality, ethics, and integrity if we are to continue to have influence." Right? Arthur C. Clarke has this bit of wisdom for us. "The best measure of a man's honesty isn't his income tax return. It's the zero adjust on his bathroom scale." I think that's true. This from Laurel Dickinson. "If you value your integrity, then be prepared to take a beating from those who have none." Very true. This source will test your age just a little bit. Leo DeRocher said, "I never question the integrity of an umpire. Their eyesight, yes." Okay. And finally, this from Martin Luther King Jr. "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort or convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy." Now please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now the four-way test.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Now please greet your fellow Rotarians.
Hi, good to see you.
Hey neighbor, how are you? Well, good to see you.
All right, we'll get back going again. Next, we're going to welcome our guests. We have two of them today. The first one, and I'll ask you to introduce you, ask you to stand and remain standing until we get both of you up, and then we'll recognize you both at the same time. So we have a visitor today, originally from Decorah, Steve Belay. Steve, can you please stand? He's in Des Moines now, moved to Des Moines, and formerly with the Decorah Rotary Club, so we welcome him. And also we have Terry Trimpe, retired 21 years and leading investors in commercial real estate ownership, and he's a guest of Dave Busick. So let's welcome them. And now it's tumbler time. This helps our Rotary Club Foundation, the organization that does great work in our community. So we encourage you to put $5 in the tumbler, or got the badge with the dollar sign on it. That's great. But please continue to keep the Rotary Club of Des Moines Foundation in mind, as that's what really makes our club different and really does great things for our community.
Kevin, I'm doing the count today for tumblers, and I'm not really good at math, so make it hard for me. Thank you.
Sounds good, thank you. And next, we're going to have to the podium Rich Leopold. As you know, he's the Executive Director of Polk County Conservation, and he's also the Vice Chair of our Community Service Group, and he's going to talk to us about that. So, Rich.
For those that were there, did everybody have fun last Thursday? That was quite an event, and we ordered up that weather special for you, and it went really well. So I'm here today to talk about a volunteer opportunity with the Greater Des Moines Botanical Garden. So those that know or have been there, in the last 3, 4, 5 years, Botanical Gardens has really expanded their mission and their outreach and things like that. They're doing fantastic things. With the Community Service Committee here, we've picked that as one of the places we want to support through our volunteer efforts. So let me just read. There's an upcoming event on Saturday, October 28th, called Trick or Trees. It's a family-friendly event offering interactive activities and entertainments. As a volunteer, they serve at activity tables and engage guests to learn about trees and spooky botanicals throughout the botanical gardens. The activities are easy to learn. Volunteers are provided information and talking points. The day of, the staff will work with you on what to do. Examples of activities include gourd guts, carnivorous plants, and bat pollination. What fun is that, right? Costumes are encouraged but not required for both volunteers and attendees. So what we're doing is we're signing up for the 10 to 12:30 shift. So we have to show up a little before 10, and after 12:30 there's another shift that will take over for us. We have 8 spots. We need to sign up by October 15th. And if you're interested, October 28th, 10 to 12:30, there is a orange sign-up sheet appropriate for Halloween. out there, or I have one here too, and find me after the meeting. So hope you'll consider it. I'll be up here again if we don't fill it up, so unless you want to hear me again, please sign up. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. You know, one of the jobs as a president is you establish the vice chairs of the committees, and we all know committees is where really a lot of the work gets done. And just super excited about what Rich is going to do and the rest of the vice chairs this year and next year. So now I have the honor and the opportunity to introduce our keynote speaker, Rob Sand, the Iowa State Auditor. And to his credit, he asked me to keep it short, but I did my homework, and it's really an impressive background that you all need to hear a little bit about. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, Rob, but I'll try to cut a little bit here and there. So Rob is our state's 33rd state auditor. He was elected in 2018 after serving 7 years as the Iowa Chief Public Corruption Prosecutor in the Iowa Attorney General's office. He led some pretty impressive things that you've heard of. He prosecuted the largest lottery rigging scheme in American history. He prosecuted the Iowa Film Office tax credit scandal, violent crimes, 24 sexual violent predators. He did a lot in that role. Stepping back a bit, he's from Decorah, from where Steve was from. Coincidentally, Rob then attended Brown University and did very well there and was named the Harry S. Truman Scholar. After Brown University, he returned to the state of Iowa and attended the great University of Iowa. Go Hawks. Just for you, Doug. Just for you. And he attended the law school there on a full merit scholarship and was the first ever student to be both president of the Iowa Student Bar Association and an editor-in-chief of the Law Journal. Before graduating, he was awarded the Hancher Finkbein Medallion, the University of Iowa's highest award. Upon his election as state auditor, he created a senior leadership team, and this is pretty cool, a senior leadership team that included a Democrat, an independent, and a Republican, with 2 of the 3 individuals having made campaign contributions to his opponent's campaign. Since being sworn in, and besides the standard auditing and reporting that you do in the role, he's added some different elements. He's added a law enforcement background perspective in the office, creating a new public innovation and efficiency program that helps government entities save substantial amounts of taxpayer dollars and made it possible for employees to take their jobs with them to small towns and rural areas anywhere in the state. He and his wife Christine live in Des Moines with their 2 sons. By the way, Christine was here not that long ago. Christine, as you may know, is the CEO of the Lorenzen Group, and she did a pretty good job, Rob. So there's a pretty high bar here for you, buddy. Please welcome and join me in welcoming Rob Sand, our state auditor.
Hi everyone, how are you? Good. Good. Glad to be here with you today. I'm unaccustomed to standing behind a podium, but I'm going to try it today and we'll see what happens. Like Guy Cook, I like to spend time in the well talking to juries, going back and forth. That's what I'm accustomed to doing. Or talking to voters, typically when I'm doing that too, I'm just out there standing right in front of you. So I always feel a little bit weird behind something like this, but the cord's pretty wrapped up here and seems short, so I'm going to stick with it and see how it goes. I appreciate the introduction, Kevin. Thank you for that. I don't want to stand up here and talk at all of you. I think that's one of the worst things that can happen. I'm so glad that the shades are closed because I know I can't compete with the view up here. The most I can hope to do is have an interesting conversation with you all. And so I want to have as much time for questions as there are questions in the room. I'll start with getting back into some of what Kevin talked about, and I'll just put a little more context on it. I think one of the most important decisions that I made when I got elected was before I actually got sworn in, who were going to be the deputies in the auditor's office. The person running the two biggest divisions that we have. The two people who were more or less in line for it were an independent and a Republican who had contributed to my opponent's campaign. And so who am I here to serve? That's the question that I think people are supposed to ask themselves after they get elected to office. Okay? So, you don't want to be a sore winner. It seems to me that these days a lot of the pressure in politics is to punish people who disagree with you, punish people who don't support you, and let it be known that anyone who crosses you or thinks different from you will have negative consequences as a result. Doesn't sound very Iowan to me. Personally, as a matter of my faith, doesn't sound very Christian to me. Raised to turn the other cheek, to forgive, to try to find places of agreement instead of focusing on places of disagreement. Boy, you want to talk about a good way to stay married to someone. Speaking of my wife, just focus on where you agree. I'm sure anyone who's in this room who's been married for any amount of time can name 3 things in their marriage that you do not bring up unless you are looking for a fight. Right? I could name them for you right now, I'm not going to. You could name yours, you probably shouldn't either. This is a small enough town that our spouses will hear about what we said. Why do we accept? Why do we think it's okay for our political leaders to behave the other way? Where it seems like half the time the first thing they do when they get up in the morning is start arguing about the things that they know we disagree on. How's that working out for us? I'd say it's not working out real great. My frustration with our political system boiled over a long time ago, and it hasn't subsided. I don't think that the Democratic or Republican parties do enough to earn the special duopoly that they've given themselves over our political system. I don't think that we are a bunch of 5th graders who can't handle more than 2 choices. That's actually insulting to 5th graders, 5-year-olds. We have 2 boys in our house. And you know, when they're younger than they are now, they're now 7 and 9. If it was late that we were getting home for dinner and it was a stressful day, you knew there was that one trick. You don't ask them what they want for dinner. You just give them the 2 options that you're okay with, right? Okay, boys, you get to decide what you want for dinner. You want Cheerios or Honey Bunches of Oats? That's a great choice. 10 seconds later, the food's ready, right? We, through the laws that exist in this state, get treated effectively the same way by the 2 major political parties, whether you want the Democrat or the Republican. As if there couldn't be any ability for us to see more deeply than that, or to express our opinions any more clearly than that if we had a different set of choices in front of us. That's a conversation for another day. Or maybe it's a conversation today if you want to raise your hand and talk about it more. But I just want to go back again to the idea that public service is supposed to be public service. I didn't get elected, and I warned Democrats about this. I didn't get elected to represent Democrats. I didn't get elected to represent myself. I want to represent the entire state of Iowa. You know, I actually think it's better for me, too, if I have people that I disagree with in the room with me when I'm making decisions. I'm this close to being perfect, guys, but I'm not quite there. Ask Christine, she will tell you. Every once in a while, there's something where I have to say, okay, you're right. And it's useful when I'm at the office to have people who think differently too, because they'll say that too. A broken clock is right twice a day, right? And so if I've got someone in the room with me when I'm trying to make a decision, what are we going to look into? What are we going to audit? What's that person say? Where did the money go? How are we going to analyze this? To have someone that I oftentimes disagree with, but at least I'm willing to listen to, means that every once in a while, when they say something that really does make sense, I can let that impact my own thinking and make a better decision because of it that's better for the state of Iowa. There are some folks in this state that you would think would want to see half of the state disappear. Let's just have it be these people or that people. The workforce shortage that we have is bad enough as it is. We should be wanting to welcome everybody and add everybody into this state because we have real problems that we need to address. one of the things I'm proudest of, if you were to ask me, okay, what makes somebody run for office? The thing that really did it for me was the idea of starting the PI program, Public Innovations and Efficiencies. I was about 6 years deep into criminal prosecution at the AG's office. Like Kevin said, a lot of the public corruption cases in the state, so I worked a lot with the auditor's office because they do public corruption investigations. Their reports would come land on my desk, and it'd be up to me to decide who needed to get indicted and what for, if anything. A lot of sexually violent predator civil commitment cases, the worst of the worst, that we're trying to keep in a secure facility past the end of their sentence. Criminal prosecution work is never happy work. You can get to the end of a case and get the absolute best possible result, and everyone wishes that the entire thing had never happened. Now, tend to be a happy and an optimistic person, and after 6 years of doing prosecution work, I realized I couldn't quite say that the same way anymore. It wasn't as true as it had been. And so I started to think, well, maybe I need to be doing something different where I can have more of a positive impact. And of course, like everyone else, I associate positivity with politics. That was the answer, obviously. Like I said, I'd worked with the auditor's office. I'd seen the work that they had done. I liked the folks I worked with there. I saw some things that I thought should be done differently, mostly in terms of adding a law enforcement perspective to their investigative side. But I also didn't think that just that one thing is enough to quit my job and run for statewide office. And so I read up on the office, opened up Chapter 11 of the Iowa Code, read it 3 times to figure out what else the office can do, and saw that it has a really broad mandate to promote efficiency. Perfect. Who doesn't want to make government more efficient, right? Little did I know. That opportunity to take this office and make it an engine for good government and an engine for saving money for taxpayers made up my mind for me. So the PI program that we created, we have about 500 local entities between counties, cities, and school districts participating every year. It has been copied in the states of Mississippi and Maryland, even though it's only a couple years old, and it has the potential to unlock hundreds of millions of dollars in savings for taxpayers at the local level. It has been an unmitigated success. It is the most fun thing about my job, not in the least because I actually get to eat pie to celebrate our pie contest winners. I was just in Cass County for my annual town hall yesterday, and they reminded me that they had been a winner the year before and asked if they were going to be a winner again. And because I had been down there, and what I do is I bring a certificate that shows that they are among the highest performing counties of their size, as well as a pie. And we get to put the certificate on the wall and the pie in our stomachs, and everyone's very happy after that. The program, one of the things I love about it, though, is I think we should call the good good and call the bad bad, right? Now, we're the auditor's office. We're not really in this work to make friends, right? Raise your hand if you've ever been audited and just really loved and appreciated all the experience and just had a great time getting audited. I don't see any hands up. I'm so surprised that I never see any hands up for that question, right? We're supposed to be the nitpickers of state government. We're supposed to be the naysayers of state government. If 9 out of 10 things are right, we're supposed to point out the one thing that isn't right. That is our job. But I like this program because it also gives us an opportunity to lift up good local public servants and remind people that, hey, government can work for us. So we got to set up systems and put people into it that are doing a good job, that are focused on serving everybody. But that if we do that, we can put ourselves into a better position. That program has been a lot of fun. The other thing I want to touch on just quickly today is the thing that I get asked about more than anything else when I get stopped on the street. The bill that passed this year that makes it so that state agencies can hide, and sometimes are required to hide, documents from our office. If you missed this, you must have been on a long vacation. It created quite a stir. We had bipartisan nationwide opposition to this bill as it was proceeding through the legislature. Here's what it does. As any of you know that have been involved in audits, when you've got an audit going, your auditor looks at what they want to look at. That's the whole point. If there were things that were off limits, it wouldn't be much of an audit. What we've done in the state of Iowa is create a very long list of things that are off limits effectively for the auditor's office to look at. You might ask yourself, Well, how are we gonna know the audits are reliable? Don't ask me. I don't know the answer to that question. That list of documents that the auditor's office can no longer look at, put yourself in the position of someone who has trust and power and access over your tax dollars. That is a roadmap, ladies and gentlemen. Think of it as a menu, actually. What sort of taxpayer dollars would you like to steal today? Well, let me see. What can I get that the state auditor can't review? They've got a nice list in front of them now for things that we are going to have a hard time looking at. Not only that, not only have they put things off limits for the office, but we also now no longer have access to Iowa's court system if we have a dispute. We've had a dispute before. As much as I agree, Kevin, go Hogs, we did take the University of Iowa to the Supreme Court and beat the pants off of them in 2020. A unanimous decision because the University of Iowa said they didn't want to give us some documentation that we believed we needed to look at to do our job. Now, instead of having access to an independent judge that can just apply the facts to the law, we're going to have access to a 3-person arbitration panel. By law, the people on that arbitration panel are 1 person from the state agency that we're auditing, a 2nd person from the auditor's office, and a 3rd person also working underneath the governor, appointed by the governor. Now, I'm not here to tell you that this governor or any other governor is going to use that to hide wrongdoing. The common sense says they're sure going to be tempted to be, right? As a part of my faith, I'm supposed to pray every day, lead us not into temptation. We just literally created a system that leads our state agency heads, our department heads, our state employees, all the way up to our governor into the temptation to hiding the misspending of tax dollars for which they are responsible. Shame on us. It's a terrible bill. That's why there was nationwide bipartisan opposition to it. Dave Walker, the former Comptroller General of the United States of America for most of George W. Bush's term, who was nominated for governor of his state by the Republican Party in 2018. He read the Senate bill as it came through. He wrote a letter to the Iowa legislature. This is a terrible idea, you shouldn't do it. The House then made amendments to it, and he read that. I read your amendments. This is still a terrible idea, you still shouldn't do it. It's law today in the state of Iowa. It's exactly the kind of thing that makes, I think, most people so frustrated with politics. It just doesn't make sense. I could go on and on and on about it. I'm going to stop and pause and see if anybody's got any questions about anything that we've been talking about so far. Yes, sir?
You gotta review the list.
Oh, review the list of the things.
Yeah.
You mean lay it out for you?
What you can't do.
Well, it's long and I don't have the whole thing memorized. Police and law enforcement investigative reports is a part of it. A relatively long exception is essentially anything impacting national security or public safety, which you could put a lot of things into that list. Medical records, educational records, and of course, very importantly, and this is one of the things that was a sticking point in the negotiations at the end, that they wouldn't take it out. The last item on the list is a catch-all item, in case they wanted something else that they wanted to be able to withhold but hadn't thought of it ahead of time. And let me address the medical records and educational records piece of this, because one of the only things that has been said in defense of the bill is, well, we want to protect people's privacy. Okay, well, we support protection of privacy. In the past, we have helped advance bills that have protected privacy, even the ones that impacted our office. There's a Republican representative from Fort Dodge, Ann Meyer, who introduced a bill at the very beginning of the pandemic related to infectious disease testing and our access to records. The way she wrote that bill, or I don't know if she wrote it, the way it first came out, whoever wrote it, very dangerous for our ability to do the work that we do, which, by the way, a lot of the work that we do is necessary and important to make sure that federal funds can come into Iowa. The feds want whatever they're spending on to be audited, right? That's $12 billion annually compared to $8 billion that's generated within the state of Iowa. So most of our state budget every year is in fact federal funds. We worked with Ann Meyer. We said, hey, the way you wrote this bill, very bad for our ability to do our job. What are you trying to accomplish? We're happy to work with you. She worked with us because she was actually out to protect privacy. And so we were able to get a bill passed that nobody ever heard about because it just was a bill that protected privacy and it wasn't too big of a deal. Our employees sign disclosure agreements every year that say, if I violate confidentiality, it's grounds for termination. Right? We take it very seriously in the office. But here's the bottom line. I think everybody in this room agrees that if you want taxpayers to pay for your education, that the price of that is the understanding that someone might be sitting in a cubicle someday reviewing our educational spending and making sure that the people who are getting money for education are actually getting an education as a result. Fair statement? Someone's gonna have to look at your transcript if you're getting student loans and say, okay, yes, you are indeed accumulating credits towards a degree. That's the only way we know that the money's getting used legitimately. Let me put it this way. Who here thinks that doctors should be able to submit bills for Medicare or Medicaid and say, I want these procedures paid for by the taxpayers when they have no right to know that I performed them on living human beings who actually needed them? Of course not, right? We have to access those kind of records to do our work. And so the idea that we're putting up roadblocks for us for doing our job is just not a good idea. Those are the two that typically get the most defense on the list. I don't think there's much of a defense to be had for it. I'm trying to think of what the other arguments are in favor of it. There's not many. Who else has got a question about anything?
What's your favorite pie?
What's my favorite pie? I'm a Sam from Decorah, Iowa. I'm contractually obligated to say it is strawberry rhubarb.
Yeah.
That is the only answer in my family. Yeah, it's actually really good too. I'm loose on favorites. I tend to have tiers, sort of, but strawberry rhubarb is top tier. Yeah, Bob.
How are you adapting to this new world?
That's a really good question. We will let folks know when we are limited from what we can look at. Which, by the way, that's an ethical obligation for the CPAs in our office who sign off on the audits. If you're an auditor and you're in an engagement, you're conducting an audit, and your client refuses to provide information to you, you have to put that in the report. Now think about that for a second. It makes sense, right? Because if you don't put it in the report and people find out later, it sounds like you're in on it. You agreed to hide things. Well, why'd you do that? So whenever we bump into this, we're certainly going to put it into our report. We're ethically obliged to do so, and it's the right thing to do, and we'll let the public know about it. Right now, things are moving more slowly than they have been prior because of the roadblocks that have been put up through the legislation that were things that we weren't even imagining were going to be things that they were going to use to slow things down. Does anybody out here work in the auditing or accounting world these days? It is rough. The idea that you would be slowing that process down and making things less efficient at a time where there is we talk about a workforce crisis in the state of Iowa. The workforce crisis in the auditing and accounting community is even beyond what we have in the state of Iowa, nationwide. In the last 3.5 years, about 20% of the people who work in auditing and accounting quit the field. Some of that was pandemic related. The biggest piece of it is just generational. Baby boomers are such a big generation that as they get up out of their cubicles and head off onto the golf courses out there, there's not enough people behind them to fill their seats. And so we just don't have the pipeline of people coming in, nor the generational size to fill those seats. So the fact that we're spending more time going back and forth about what we can look at, when really at the end of the day, the answer under standards is whatever we believe we need to, is just kind of silly. It just took effect July 1, and so we're just sort of getting to learn exactly how it's going to get used. Skeet.
Rob, would there be any recourse for people like the Taxpayers Association to litigate this?
It's a good question.
Is it constitutional?
Yeah, is it constitutional? Is there recourse for a group to litigate? We will, that question gets a little bit of the same answer. I'll tell you this, I don't there's two kinds of ways you can challenge something under the Constitution. One is a facial challenge. I'm just looking at this law on its face. I don't care what you do with it. It is always going to be unconstitutional, right? So if the legislature passed a law that says, actually, we can make you quarter soldiers in your house, you wouldn't need to wait for them to do it. You could just say, hey, that's the Third Amendment. You can't make anybody quarter soldiers. We're not there on this. The auditor's office does exist in the Iowa Constitution, but it says with duties as assigned by the legislature. The existence of the office implies that it has certain authority, but we're gonna have to kind of wait and see how it gets applied. So we'll look at the law. We're gonna have to wait and see some facts develop on how they're using it before we can make a judgment call as to say, yeah, we think we have a constitutional claim here worth making. As to other organizations, I don't think that there would be standing to make a legal challenge to it. We would certainly have the standing to it, but I don't think that in Iowa's Constitution that anyone, or in a statute, that there would be anyone else that does. It's frustrating because you look at this and I go, again, this goes to me, the lack of accountability in electoral politics right now, right? There are a lot of people out there who think, well, I'm in the majority party in my district. Everybody's only got two choices. And because I'm in the majority party, I can spit in voters' faces and they're gonna vote for me again anyways because I'm better than the other alternative. Does anyone disagree that that's the reality that we live in? I mean, that's it. We gotta wake up to it. We gotta do something about it. Because laws like this can get passed and people can trust that it's not gonna hurt them. Because there isn't any real competition in our electoral system. A massive number of races went uncontested in the Iowa legislature last year. I tend to believe that competition is a good thing. You want to have people on equal footing competing to provide the best services. What we have here is a duopoly, right? I mean, it's only better than a monopoly by one, and a monopoly is pretty much a disaster. There was a hand up over here somewhere. Steve.
Yeah, what's the other side of it? Why did the other side want to do that?
Yeah.
And then, if you could, who were the people that pushed on this?
Yeah.
Naming individuals, so we all know we did it.
Okay.
Whether we, like it or not.
Sure. I will point out, I will definitely repeat into the microphone that I was asked to name the individuals who pushed this bill. The first question was, what's the other side? So a piece of that is the privacy argument. But again, I could pass a law that says that I'm going to protect all of you from fire-breathing green dragons. You should vote for me, and it's really okay. But by the way, it's going to cost you all $10,000 a year to fight off these fire-breathing green dragons, right? The privacy argument has about as much validity as that statute. Am I making sense here? We didn't have any privacy issues. We've worked to protect and improve privacy issues. We take that very seriously in the office. One point that was made was, well, let's, I think it makes sense, as we're going to this arbitration panel. It was said that, well, state agencies do this already, and so why shouldn't the state auditor? Why shouldn't the state auditor have to go to arbitration for dispute resolution instead of going to the courts? Well, there's a very simple reason for that. I'm independently elected. This office, by the Constitution of the state of Iowa, is an independent office. And that's how it ought to be, right? If you put your auditor underneath your management, they're not going to be doing as much, they're not going to have as much of an impact as they would otherwise. It makes sense for state agencies that have the same boss to have arbitration for dispute resolution. If the DNR and the Department of Public Health for some reason are at loggerheads on something, well, they both report to the governor. Go have a sit down with the governor and sort it out. You shouldn't need court action for that because they have the same boss. I don't have the same boss. Whoever the state auditor is, they're supposed to be independent and responsive really just to the state.
So what's the real reason?
I think the real reason is that we uncovered more misspent money in my first term than anyone else ever had. When I ran in 2018, I said my campaign slogan was "Wake up the watchdog," that I was going to be aggressive and be assertive. Why? I have this recollection my dad and I were getting out of the car on Water Street in Decorah, it's the main drag, and he goes, "Lock up." And I finally asked him, "Why do we lock up?" Rasmussens, who live 2 blocks away from us, my best buddy in high school, they didn't lock anything. Do you know Al and Chris on Blues? Yeah.
Probably left the keys in the ignition.
Thank you, Steve. Yes. Al Rasmussen literally left his keys in the ignition, in the driveway, didn't even put his truck in the garage, folks. Never was their house door locked. And I'm just sitting there as a kid being like, why did we lock up? What's the answer here? Either we are paranoid about losing stuff and stuff doesn't really matter all that much, so we should relax, or the Rasmussens are naive and too trusting and they're going to get taken advantage of. And my dad said something that has colored a lot of what I have thought about since then. He said, we don't want to tempt people, right? My point in saying we're going to wake up the watchdog, we're going to be assertive in this office, is to help people in positions of trust and power over our tax dollars not be tempted to misuse them. And it worked for a little while. It's not working right now. Within a year, within 6 months even of taking office, I had people say to me, "Hey Rob," former coworker of mine at the Attorney General's office, "Hey Rob, I was talking to somebody who works over at this state agency and they didn't know that we used to work together, but they said, yeah, you know, we used to make these purchases that were illegal. It was technically illegal, didn't seem like that big of a deal, but we quit making them because it seems like the new state auditor is more willing to call people out for it." Perfect. That's what you want. You want people to say, oh, there are rules, the rules matter, the rules get enforced, and I don't want to have the rules enforced against me, so I'm just going to behave. I brought that into the office. I said I was going to do it. I think the fact that I won meant people wanted it. It was the same thing I was doing when I was at the AG's office. I pushed really hard for prison time for people who stole taxpayer money. In the state of Iowa, there is no limit to the amount of money that you can steal from taxpayers and still not serve a day in prison. That is not an invitation. I've been asking the legislature for 4 years to change that. They still haven't done it. I think that's the real reason. There's a small number of folks who don't want accountability for what they do. Now, I can't tell you that that is the governor. I didn't hear back when I reached out to her office to try to have a conversation about it. I can't tell you who in her office was pushing it. You did ask me who pushed it the most. The answer to that is State Senator Michael Busolo. He has an accounting degree. He never was an auditor. We tried to have professional staff from our office sit down with him, with state senators, the day that they were trying to get it passed. No one wanted to have a conversation with us. I literally had people who had served you all for more than 20 years in the auditor's office standing outside the state senate at 9:30 at night, trying to get them to slow down, to listen to us. Why do you have to have a vote on this tonight? No interest. That bill came out. I learned a new legislative term, a strike after amendment. So you run one bill through the subcommittee and the committee, and then when it comes to the floor, you rip every word of it out and stuff in different information instead. That's what happened with this one. We had a strike after amendment, and by the time the language came out to when it passed on the floor vote in the state senate, it was 10 hours. That was it. I see Kevin stood up. Does that mean time's up? I didn't mean to just stand up here and complain about the one thing the whole time, but that's what the questions ended up being. Look, I'm a genuine believer, right, that when we look at stuff like this, I'll end this way, a little more hopeful note. A lot of times you might see on social media that post that says what people think success looks like, and it's kind of a straight line going up. And then the next one is what success actually looks like, and it's all squiggly and does some loop-de-loops and goes up and down, right? 2 steps forward, 1 step back. This bill's a mistake, period. We're gonna get it figured out, and at some point, I've even had a legislator actually that voted for it say, yeah, there's parts of it that we should not have passed. It said that we ought to be repealing parts of it. We're going to get this figured out. The sooner we get it figured out, the better for the state of Iowa. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Rob. Really appreciate your engaging presentation today, getting us all thinking, and it's just another example of why it's great to be a member of the Rotary Club of Des Moines. As a token of our appreciation, we're going to donate a book to the Rotary Rosie Reader Band. Darn it, I stumbled on that. We set that up with a $40,000 donation, and that book will be in your honor on that band. So, upcoming speakers. We've got Jacob Nicholson, who is a part of the Iowa State Government Reorganization Program. October 5th, we'll have District Governor Dennis Drager. And October 12th, we'll have a CIRRUS representative, Mike O'Donnell, Center of Industrial Research and Service. So some interesting programs. Please think about inviting a guest to one of these and join us for those meetings. So with that being pretty well done here, I'd like to thank everybody. First of all, for Kitty, for sure. Jordan, thank you. Rob, thank you very much. And thank all of you. You are what makes this club great. Have a great day. We're adjourned.